I mean, like, what do you tell people who are like legit, like, especially young men who are probably like, either too downwardly mobile, let's say, or like just straight up like too ugly for apps? Because I feel like that's a huge thing that like nobody wants to face and say out loud. Like, being ugly fucking sucks. It's hard for people. It's, I get in trouble anytime I say this, but a lot of people are too ugly. It really is painful. There's some people who aren't meant to use dating apps correctly. Like, it's not easy for men, certainly. Like, men are kind of forced to swipe right on everyone, and that's not really fair.
So there's this company that lets you upload your Tinder data in order to find out and like assess, what are the probabilities of you having any success on here, given your location, your race, your gender, all those things. And one of the things that was really sad is that as of their latest calculation, I think men are left swipe, meaning they're rejected. If they're over 30, it's 99.9% of the time. And if they're under 30, it's
crap.
It's I believe 99% even, maybe like 98.5% of the time. And even like men who are doing the best on these platforms, they're still getting rejected over 60 to 70% of the time. So yes, the platforms in a way are severely stacked against your likely success if you're a male swiper. But I think one important thing to remember is that optimizing profiles is a thing that can happen. Like, it's in the same way that like if you try to rank on Google, you're very likely to not be in the first several pages or several hundred pages. You'll just get left behind. But if you actually specialize and like really get good at the thing that you're good at, or the thing that you want to show to the world, then you can actually begin to rank higher up on Google. And so in a similar way, it is possible on a dating app for virtually any person to find the right combination of like app and your photos or videos that tell your story, a profile that captures, what's meaningful about you and what you want, such that someone can see it and decide that you're worth it for them. It's perfectly fine.
For anyone though?
I mean, it's perfectly fine if 99.9% of people reject you if you're looking for one person, because what matters is that you get matched to that one person, and it is ultimately the responsibility of the app to ensure through their algorithms and through their user growth that they help get that person on there. So it is, at the end of the day, a matter of app choice and profile design, photo selection, messaging, date ideas. Like, there's a lot in the ultimate funnel that goes from like point A to point Z. But one of the things that I'm a little optimistic about is that you can do a lot to optimize the overall experience. But that doesn't mean that for the vast majority of people, they're not going to see misery most of the time.
What is going to happen now that something has occurred that has never occurred before, if they're right that it hasn't occurred before, where now all of a sudden there's this small amount of men that women think that they're going to be able to have a relationship with, and then there's all the men in the bottom that get totally left out, like you were talking about before. Does this end up creating, and has it already created in a way, a kind of dystopia?
Yeah, I mean, especially part of the problem is like with dating, we usually hear from people in like, in big coastal cities, and those are probably the places where people have the most acute problems. Like, my friends in Florida have a very different experience, but it's still difficult. So I think it's a mix. I think that it's true for a lot of young people, but it's not universally true. And that's why like geography really plays in. The thing, part of the reason I think that my Floridian friends have a different situation though is because even though they're using Tinder and Hinge and whatever, they're still operating in like very small towns where they don't obviously like literally know everyone, but there's like a familiarity that doesn't really exist in a more transitory place. So yeah, I mean, I'm more inclined to agree with it though, especially for the purposes of like universalized advice.
And before Steve, can you sum up, because I talked a mouthful right now, can you in a way sum up what you foresee as being the worst case scenario that's either already happening now or will happen in a couple of years?
To say much about this, right? Just partially because like it really does feel so different for everyone. I mean, so I came onto this like I really agreed with sort of like the incel black pill, but as I like move around the country, my perspective has changed quite a bit.
So it's the different places in the country that give you hope. That's interesting. Would you say that there's something that they share in common, the places that give you hope versus the places that give you dread, existential dread?
I mean, like, there's no hope in, like, California. I mean, San Francisco specifically, probably LA is really difficult. New York, I would say, is probably really difficult. I've noticed that the people I know who have least problems dating are people who've stayed in the same, like, mid-sized city, suburb, or rural area most of their life, or in that same basic area, which is why I think the Midwest is interesting, because people, like, not everyone's from Chicago, right? But a lot of people are from, like, Indianapolis, and they move to Chicago, and it's less extreme than, like, being from Arizona and moving to New York.
Interesting. And Steve, do you agree with Default Friend's statement about California and New York? Are they doomed?
We'd have to qualify that, because if you are, let's say, like, a straight male dating in California and you switch your location to New York, you might see a 20-fold rise in matches instantly. And so you go from feeling like there are no prospects, there's no one who you care, like, maybe there's people you care about but you match with no one, to suddenly you getting you're not only matching with 4, 5, 10 times the number of people, but you're also getting messages, which is, like, the night and day experience that you can have simply by switching your location. And so I think it's kind of important, as Default Friend noted, that, like, location is a really salient factor for your likelihood of finding what you're looking for. And it also goes without saying that, like, if you go to let's say you're into a certain set of specific kinks and you try to find them in a town of 100,000 versus a city of 10 million, like, it's such a different experience. And when you then use the power of dating apps to laser in on people who share, whether it be kinks or relationship paradigm preferences or just favorite kinds of date ideas, like, there's so many different ways you can align with someone that when you go to a place with a higher population density, it just makes it that much easier for the apps to do their work.
Do you suggest people align themselves based on their kinks? Like, go...
I don't recommend that if you're looking for your forever partner, you have to make that decision for yourself, whether they need to share a specific kink or whether you can either forego it or find satisfaction elsewhere if it's something that, let's say, only exists in 0.1% of the population. So that you always have options there. I generally factor in, like, what you're actually looking for as, like, you're the end user, because some people are looking for a hookup tonight, some people are looking for a marriage within the next 24 hours if possible, because they wanted to have kids 5 years ago. So there's just so much variation there that, I'm a coach, so I have to constantly think about not, what is statistically probable and what is happening now, but also what do you actually want here, because I can't project any of my shit onto you. It's really important to find out and question it too. If what someone desires seems like directly out of line with what they're likely to find, then I can we can go into troubleshooting mode and think about, like, if that is indeed the desire and that's a deal breaker, then do we have to get you to move? Do we have to change your location on the app? Are you willing to fly someone out here in order to date them? There's a lot of variables that go into it.
I have a question for you, and I'm sorry for, like, taking the reins so much, Lev. I'll go back on.
Take the reins as much as you want. I want to bring the fire here, so go for it.
I mean, like, what do you tell people who are, like, legit, like, especially young men who are probably, like, either too downwardly mobile, let's say, or, like, just straight up, like, too ugly for apps? Because I feel like that's a huge thing that, like, nobody wants to face and say out loud. Like, being ugly fucking sucks. It's hard for people. It's, I get in trouble anytime I say this, but a lot of people are too ugly. It really is painful. I'm not saying I get in trouble because I say it and people are like, oh, you could say that as a woman. And I'm like, well, like, what the fuck? No.
There are ugly women, but they do. I mean, I guess they could pull something. That's kind of. I don't think every, if you're, like, a disfigured woman, you're, like, missing at your nose or something doing a car accident, like, you're fucked. Right?
Well, you remember that Sopranos episode with the one leg, that lady?
Oh, but that was an asset to Tony because he was talking about it was easier access. He was like, yeah, it's easier access. Remember?
Okay.
I have a photographic memory of Sopranos quotes. I'm sorry.
Yes, you do. Steve, what do you think? The ugly question.
I think that just I've now looked at 500,000 or more dating profiles. And I think what stands out to me is that ugliness isn't so much endemic to your DNA or to your skin texture, color, whatever. It's frequently tied to your entire presentation throughout a profile. And so you can be generically attractive, but put up terrible photos that don't show you in a flattering light, or maybe they show you in a light you think is flattering, but to the average user, they see that and they're like, what on earth is this person trying? Why did they put up 8 selfies in a row from the exact same angle? This makes them seem addled in some way. Or you can be extremely attractive and put up photos that someone took when you were like midway through eating a sandwich, or doing something that just like made the viewer a little bit confused. So I think that your overall presentation is very important, and it's also fully possible to find people who don't care as much about looks. And so if you really think that looks are not your strongest suit and that you're going to be a little bit screwed over in a visual first medium like modern dating apps, there are dating apps that have allowed for you to not have the requirement of a profile picture. Some of them allow for a blurred photo. Some allow for videos. So this goes to another point that I was going to make earlier, which is that there's an overall struggle. I want to like situate us in like what's happening at a large scale in the dating industry, because I consult for founders pretty regularly, and so what I hear from them is like, okay, I'm launching this app, and then like I have this niche that I wanted to appeal to. I wanted to help these people. And their goal is to essentially get users' attention, get them to sign up, get them to like do the thing, like go meet someone. But the challenge here is that the average user attention can be minimal. You know, they might give you 5 minutes a week on the app. And in those 5 minutes, you had to get them to upload several different photos that showcase a story of their lives, and in a compelling way. You had to get them to potentially fill out paragraphs worth of profile information or answer up to 100 or more profile questions. And you may not get that for weeks from a user. And another challenge is if you don't deliver for that user, they may just never open your app again. And so it's very likely that a dating app that just launched can lose 90% of the users it gained in the first month by the end of that first month, because attrition can be extremely high if you're not pulling people back in, which gets us into this attention game where so many dating apps now are motivated to hold your attention and keep it there in order to show to their investors, look, we have these engaged users, you should give us more money. Or if users are sufficiently engaged, maybe then they'll pay. So from the app maker perspective, it's a really difficult effort. Like the effort to succeed is extraordinarily difficult, because you have to get people's attention, keep their attention, potentially when they're not receiving the reciprocal attention they wanted on your app in the first place, and potentially if the actual UX patterns that you've built in, like maybe they don't work very well. And so when you have a lot of users who are struggling with getting attention from other people because maybe they didn't put together the strongest profile, maybe their looks aren't putting them in whatever the top percentage of people who are going to succeed on this app, they need some extra help. They could use significant extra help when it comes to crafting their story and putting together a presentation. And sometimes the app itself just will fail them, because if it's an app that, given what spread there is in terms of available dating apps, there's video first, there's some that let you send only audio messages, there's some that force you to meet right up front without knowing anything about the person and then have you ask questions later. Some of them have profiles that are only live for an hour, so you can essentially like meet someone, go hook up, and then never have to hear from them again. Then there's some that ask you 4,000 questions about who you are. So like, given how much variation there is, it's hard for users to even know, like, where do I go? Where do I fit? And
I don't mean to bring this meme up specifically in relation to what you were talking about, but I think
there is such a thing, I will point out, as voice physiognomy as well. That is another thing.
But in relation to this particular
so it's
meme
like the
here,
audio message.
In relation to this meme, the idea is that while you are right, people can do all kinds of things to spruce themselves up.
Is that Yanduri Dev on the other side, or is that another guy?
I have no idea. But people can do all sorts of things, but at the end of the day, you're still going to have people out there who, let's say, are going to be average to low, and the question is, are we at the situation when it comes to, like Default Friends said, in certain places this is not the case, but in the cases of the big competitive cities, that you're not really going to have people who maybe before would have been able to find somebody. And I'm not even talking about just having a quick a quick porking. I'm talking about finding somebody to actually settle down with and have kids and all that, all that good stuff.